Hilchos Me'ila Perek Revi, the laws of sacrilege, misappropriation of consecrated items, chapter 4. This class is also being pre-recorded for the second day of Rosh Hashanah 5785. So we continue to extend our blessings to our brothers and sisters locally and around the world. Ksiva v'chasima toiva, may you be inscribed and sealed in a good way. L'shana toiva u'mesuka, for a good and for a sweet year. And with that, let's get right to it. Today we discuss, there's a couple of mini themes, but the two big themes in this chapter are how Me'ila applies to money. You put aside money for a sacrifice, the money becomes holy. And if you benefit from that money, you may be transgressing the Me'ila prohibition. And also we're going to talk about how Me'ila interplays with vows. Because when you make a vow and you declare a certain object prohibited to you, there's a certain level of holiness that that object assumes towards you. And by transgressing your vow, violating your vow, you may also be misappropriating the holiness of that object. So we're going to talk about how Me'ila and Nidarim, vows, how they interplay. That's the two big things, again with a couple of small other laws, as we have in every chapter. Halacha Aleph says the Rambam, hamafrish mois. A person puts aside money lechatasai, for either a sin offering, le'ilasai, for a burnt offering, la'ashamai, for a guilt offering, or l'tayren u'b'nayayna, or for a bird offering, pigeons or turtle doves. The moment you put aside the money, mayalin bahen misha shehifrish. From the moment you put aside, you separate the money, you have the prohibition of Me'ila applies. And if you benefit from that money for personal uses, you've transgressed the commandment. Hifrish l'shlamim ein mayalin bahem. On the other hand, if you put aside money for shlamim, for a peace offering, since shlamim is kadashim kalim, lower level sacrifices, which the holiness only goes into effect with regards to Me'ila after the blood is sprinkled, but not before then. So the money that you put aside also doesn't become holy. Ein mayalin bahem, the prohibition of Me'ila doesn't apply to the money. Halacha beis. Hikdish ever echad l'domav lamizbeach. You have a cow standing in front of you, and you declare that one of its limbs is monetarily holy. In other words, you take upon yourself that the worth of the leg of this cow is holy, and you're going to use it to bring an offering on the mizbeach. There's a suffix, there's a doubt now. Im pashta kedusha bekulan eloi pashta. Did this declaration cause the holiness to spread to the entire animal or not? Lefichach, therefore, tikra v'lo yipadeh. Rather offer it as a sacrifice, do not redeem it as a disqualified or blemished sacrifice. But if you did redeem it, ein mayalin b'pidyaynai, the money is not considered fully holy, because we don't even know if the whole animal became holy. So if somebody were to use the money of that redemption for personal use, he wouldn't have transgressed the prohibition of Me'ila. Halacha Gimel, hamafrish mois linazirusai. A person puts aside money for his Nazirite offerings. Now, a Nazirite has three offerings that he has to bring. An oila, there's a burnt offering. A chatas, there's a sin offering. And there's a shlamim, there's a peace offering. The oila and the chatas go into the category that we saw in halacha number 1, that they're kachei kachim, they're highest level sacrifices. So the moment you put aside the money becomes holy. Shlamim is kachim kalim, doesn't become holy till later. So if a person puts aside just money to cover all of his Nazirite sacrifices, the question is, which money is which? Which money is going towards the sacrifices that are forbidden from now? Which ones are going to the one that's permitted now and forbidden only later? Therefore, we kind of jump on both sides. Asr lehanes bohen, we say, just in case you touch the oila money or the chatas money, don't have benefit from them. But if you were to have benefit from them, we couldn't hold you accountable for Me'ila, because all the money could technically be offered as a shlamim, as a peace offering. There's no Me'ila when it comes to peace offering. Only the innards that are offered on the mizbeach, and even then, only after the blood is sprinkled. Mace, and therefore, if in this scenario, the Nazirite puts away money, and then he dies, he doesn't have a chance to bring the offerings that he intended. Yiplu lindava, the money which he put aside, should all go towards buying voluntary offerings, because they all might be used to purchase the shlamim, the peace offering. Hayu mifurashim. If by the time he dies, the money was already clearly designated, some for chatas, some for oila, some for shlamim. Says the Rambam, dmei chatas yelchu liyam hamelach. The money of a karban chatas should go to the Dead Sea. And the law is, as we learned yesterday, when it comes to a karban chatas whose owner dies, you don't have benefit from it, but if you do, you don't transgress the prohibition of Me'ila. Dmei oila, the money that he put aside for the burnt offering, serious kachim, yaviu oilo, mayalin bahen. Literally use the money to buy a burnt offering. And if anybody were to misappropriate that money, they would be violating the prohibition of Me'ila. And the shlamim, of course, there is no Me'ila at all, because it's kachim kalim. Amar, if the Nazir said, Elu lechatasi v'hashar lin zirusi. He designated some, but not the rest. So he's got a bunch of piles of money here. He says, this pile of money is for chatas. The rest is for my other Nazirite offerings, which includes an oila and a shlamim. Says the Rambam, Mimnena b'chol hashar ma'al. If he misappropriates all of the remaining money besides for the chatas money, since for sure in there, included, is money for a burnt offering, which me'ilah begins right now, so he definitely used that money, so he transgresses me'ilah. But if he only derives benefit from part of that unclear money, which part of it's going to go to oila, part of it's going to go to shlamim, maybe he landed on the part that's for the shlamim. And therefore, leimal, we cannot say that he transgressed me'ilah. Or if he said, here's the money, this one is going towards my burnt offering, the rest is going towards my other Nazirite obligations, which includes a chatas, which is problematic from the start, and shlamim, which is only problematic later. Same thing. If he derives benefit from all the money, that means he for sure touched the money, which is dedicated to the chatas offering, so he commits me'ilah. If he only derives benefit from part of them, there's no me'ilah, she'ein bidmei shlamim me'ilah, because maybe he touched the shlamim money, and the money of the shlamim doesn't have me'ilah applying to it, as we just explained. Hifrish mois v'amar. If a person puts aside money and he says, Eilu lo'ilasi, ve'eilu lechatasi, ve'eilu lishlamim, he puts them all aside for clear designations. These are for the burnt offering, these are for the sin offering, these are for the peace offering. But then v'nis arvu, all the money got mixed. Mayalin bekulan or mayalin b'miktasan. Here, whether you used it all, or even if you used part of it, there's clear me'ilah, because everything is designated, and you have to always be worried that you touched the money of the chatas or the oila, which have the laws of me'ilah. The Ketzad Yasa, what do you do in this scenario to save yourself? Yikach shalish behemoths. Take 3 animals, umechalel, dmei chatas b'chol makom shehu ala chatas. You transfer the money that was set aside for chatas. You say, wherever it is, I don't know where it is in this pile, but wherever it is, the money should go to buy this animal. Udmei oila ala oila. The money I put aside for the burnt offering should transfer to this animal, burnt offering. Udmei shlamim al shlamim. And the money for the peace offering should go to the peace offering. Halacha daled echad mimechuyivei kinin. A person is obligated to bring a ken, a pair of birds. He had to bring a pair of birds. Where are the 2 birds that are kosher to be offered as sacrifices? We had them here the other day. Here they are, the pigeon and the turtle dove. Either you bring 2 pigeons or you bring 2 turtle doves. So you had a Jew who had to bring, for whatever reason, a pair of birds. Shehifrish mois v'amar. He puts aside money and he says, Elu l'chayvasi. These are for my obligation. Mayalin bekulan or mayalin b'miktsasan. Since both of them, the birds are either going to be a chatas or an oila, a sin offering and a burnt offering, in which either case, the prohibition to derive benefit begins right away. So whether you use all the money or some of the money, me'ilah has been committed. If they died, if the person that was obligated to bring the pair of birds died, the money simply goes to donations to voluntary offerings, as we explained in the laws of the Nazirite, umayalin bahen, and because they were associated with chatas or oila, the money is still subject to the laws of me'ilah. Halacha hey hamafrish chatas al achilas chelev. A person puts aside an animal as a sin offering for committing the sin of eating forbidden fats. Then when he actually brings it, he tells the Kohen he's offering a sin offering for eating blood. Since you brought the animal for the wrong sin, you don't achieve atonement. But fascinatingly, how does that interplay with me'ilah? Therefore, if you use it, you aren't committing me'ilah because there's no holiness here. What if you did a little variation here? You put aside money to buy a sin offering to cover for eating forbidden fats. And then you ended up buying a sin offering to cover for blood, for eating blood. If you did so inadvertently, you've achieved atonement. Therefore, if you then go ahead and misappropriate it, there's me'ilah. If you did it purposely, there's no atonement. You're not supposed to switch it purposely. Therefore, if you do misappropriate the funds, you're not considered to have performed me'ilah, because the whole sacrifice never became fully holy. Halacha vav, hamafrish shtei slayim le'asham. A person puts aside 2 silver coins for an asham. Each selah is worth 4 dinar. Is worth 4 smaller coins. That's why I'm using $1, because $1 is also worth 4 quarters, so it's easier to visualize. Person puts aside $2 to buy a guilt offering, which is obligated to for a different reason. Instead of taking the money and buying the guilt offering that he's supposed to, he takes the money and he buys 2 rams totally for a mundane purpose, not for a sacrifice. Since he's used money for a guilt offering to buy chulin, to buy mundane stuff, he has committed me'ilah. What's the punishment for committing me'ilah? You have to pay back the principal plus a 5th, which is really a quarter of the principal in Torah's view, so that with the 5th, it's now 5 units. which means v'chayav l'shalim asara dinarim. He's going to be obligated to pay back 10 quarters, 250. The $2 is the principal, plus a fifth, i.e. a quarter, which is 50 cents. Shehin shtei slayim v'chaimesh, which is the $2 that he originally misappropriated, plus a fifth. Now, what do you do with this money? You have now $2.50 instead of $2. V'yavi bohen asham. First of all, use that money to buy the original sacrifice that you were intending to buy. Go buy the guilt offering. It's actually going to be a better standard guilt offering because you have $2.50 instead of $2 now. So buy an even better quality guilt offering. V'yavi karban asham al mi'ilasi, and you still have to go bring another guilt offering as the sacrifice for the mi'ilah, for the misappropriation. Lefichach, therefore, im haya echad mishni ha'elim shekana yafesh teis loyim, if it happens to be that one of the rams which you purchased was actually worth $2, you bought it for $1, but it was actually worth $2. The hasheni yafe asara dinarin, and somehow the second one was worth $2.50, even though you bought it only for $1. Yavi hashave asara asham tachas ha'me'ilah ima chaimesh. You can bring the one that's worth $2.50 as the guilt offering to cover the misappropriation with the extra chaimish, the extra principal. V'yavi hashaveh shtei slayim asham al mi'ilaseh, and the one that's worth $2, bring it as the asham for your actual mi'ilah. So it actually will turn out that what you did won't bring you any new consequences. You'll just use those 2 mundane rams for the sacrifices to cover. If it wasn't the scenario that you bought $2, 2 rams for chulin, you bought 1 ram for your guilt offering and the other ram for chulin. So here, you've only misappropriated $1 because the other dollar actually was used to buy the asham. So now, im haya shel asham yafesh teis layim, if the animal which you bought for the guilt offering was actually worth $2, yavi oiseh la'asham meharishain, bring it as your original guilt offering because you had put aside $2 for it, so that's great. Or if the remaining one, the one that was bought for the mundane purpose, is worth $2, yavi oiseh asham mi'ilah, so you can now bring it as the asham to cover your mi'ilah problem. Because you only misappropriated one of the dollars that were originally put away for the guilt offering. Just add another 125, the yiplo lindava, which will be the principal plus a fifth, which that'll go towards voluntary offerings, and so you'll end up with the least consequences suffered. The actual animal which you used to buy, and that was the misappropriation, becomes your atonement, becomes the way you take care of the asham that you have to bring for a mi'ilah. A person has money put aside for sin offering, and he uses it before he actually has a chance to offer his actual sin offering. Yossi chaimesh al mashanena, like in the last scenario, simply add the fifth to what you had benefit from, v'yavi b'dam av chatasei, and use that money to buy the original intended sin offering. V'yavi karban asham al mi'ilasei, and bring the guilt offering, which you're obligated now because of the misappropriation, as a separate sacrifice. V'cheinim nena midmei asham. So too, if you have benefit from the money put aside for a guilt offering, before you bring the guilt offering, add the fifth and use the new amount of money to buy the guilt offering. Plus another guilt offering to cover the mi'ilah prohibition. Because when you're dealing with sacrifices that are meant to go to the altar, the way you take care of it and reimburse is by bringing the actual sacrifice to the altar. When you have things consecrated to the temple treasury, the way you take care of them is by reinstating or reimbursing the money to the temple treasury. What if the person found out that it was inadvertent, right? The whole case is inadvertent because you only bring a sacrifice in inadvertent cases. So what if he found out that he did mi'ilah, and only then he originally brought his original sin offering, and he hadn't had a chance yet to set aside a sacrifice to cover the mi'ilah prohibition, which he did. Or he did set it aside, but he didn't include it in the money which he had put aside for the original sin offering. Whatever money he now has to make up, the principal plus a fifth, has to be destroyed. Because you cannot use it to buy a sacrifice, you already have a sacrifice. So it's like it's the case of a classic chatayis hameses. It's where you used the actual sin offering which you originally intended, and now you have money meant for a sin offering, that money needs to be destroyed. If you only found out that you committed mi'ilah after the offering was offered, the money that you make for reimbursement for compensation plus the fifth go towards voluntary offerings. Since over here you already offered the sin offering, you're going to be putting aside now money for reimbursement. Doesn't make sense to put it aside to be destroyed. If it was already put aside, then you destroy it. But you're putting it aside now, put it aside to the voluntary sacrifices. In both scenarios, the asham that has to be brought for the actual sin of me'ilah must be brought. Ube asham. If it was a guilt offering, this whole scenario where you found out before or after it was offered. If it wasn't a sin offering, if it was a guilt offering, no matter whether you found out before or after it was brought, since it isn't the case of a chatas. So the special law of chatayis hameshes doesn't apply over here, and therefore the money you're going to put aside plus the fifth go towards voluntary donation offerings. It's like leftovers of asham offerings money, which goes towards nadava, and of course for your prohibition that you've committed, you must bring a guilt offering as well. If a person has a burnt offering or a peace offering and he sells them, you've done nothing. It's a void sale. You're using holy stuff. It's even biblical law that whatever money was used in the purchase becomes completely chulin, totally mundane, as it was. Nevertheless, the rabbis find him, they penalized him in such a case, that even the money which he made also must go towards buying voluntary offerings. Even if the animal was worth 4 and he made some money, sold it for 5, all 5 go towards voluntary donation offerings. But there is no me'ilah. If somebody misappropriates that money, you don't transgress it biblically or rabbinitically. It's a void sale in that regard. The money never became holy in any sense. It's only holy insofar as the penalty is concerned, but not essentially. Halacha tes, from here on out, we discuss yesh me'ilah bin adarim. How does me'ilah interplay with vows? The laws of me'ilah do apply to vows. Ketzad, what's an example of this? Ha'emer, a person says, Kikar zu alai karban oy hektish. This loaf of bread that I'm holding is upon me, it's considered for me as a sacrifice or holy. The achla, if he ate it, mal, he commits me'ilah. Afal pishi muteres la'acherim, even though other people could benefit from it. That's the whole difference between vows and regular hektish. Regular hektish, if you make it holy, it's holy for everybody. Here, it's only for me. Kikar zu alai. Only on me I make it prohibited. Well, for you, it's hektish, so for you, there's me'ilah. And therefore it cannot be redeemed incidentally. It's only holy for you, not for others, so you can't redeem it. Amar, if a person says, Kikar zu kaidesh ay karban, this loaf is holy, not for me. It is holy or it is a sacrifice. The achla, if he ate it, bein hu bein acher, whether you or someone else, mal, they've committed me'ilah. It's holy for everybody. Lefichach yesh lapidya, and therefore it could be redeemed because it's holy for everybody. Haisal, the fun of kikar shel hefker, if a person had an ownerless loaf, the Amar, and he says, Kikar zu hektish, this loaf is holy. Not la manas la achla. The moment he takes it, having in mind to eat it, ma'al lefi kula. He commits me'ilah fully, because it's ownerless. You just made it hektish. Now you're taking it to eat it. You're both becoming the owner and misappropriating it. So you commit me'ilah. Al manas la hayrisha. But if you picked it up not to eat it, you picked it up to hand it off to somebody else, ma'al lefi tevas hanaya sheba. You only commit me'ilah as if you've misappropriated not the full value of the loaf, but only the value of giving such a gift. Because that's what you want to do. You took it to give it as a gift. How much would a person pay to get a loaf of bread as a gift? Or how much is that gift worth? Much less than the actual value of the bread. And therefore the amount that you're considered to have misappropriated from hektish is only the amount of the gift's worth. If someone tells a friend, Kikari alecha hektish, look, my loaf is forbidden to you as holy. And then I gift it to you. If the receiver uses it, he commits me'ilah. The giver has no problem. He never made it forbidden on himself. It's forbidden to you. But you accepted that. So if you take the gift and use it, you're misappropriating hektish. Same laws apply to all other prohibitions of vows. Whoever becomes prohibited by dint of the vow also is under the prohibition of me'ilah for that object. All things that are included in the rubric of a prohibition of a vow can combine. If in total you have an amount of 5 cents, a pruta worth of benefit from these holy objects that you declare holy for yourself by virtue of the vow, ma'al, you commit me'ilah like you'd commit me'ilah for any other holy object. Halacha Yud Aleph, here's another law relating to vows. Ha'emer, if a person says, Hanetiyos ha'elu karban im einan niktzatzos hayom. These saplings, if I don't cut them today, they're becoming a sacrifice for me. If this cloak or this talus doesn't get burnt today, it's becoming a karban for me. The day passes, they aren't cut, they aren't burnt. They become holy. They must be redeemed like any other hektish. Only then can you have benefit from them. But if he says, these saplings are considered a sacrifice. Until they're cut, Eina yachal livdaisan, now you cannot redeem them ever. Shebechol eis sheyipadu, yachzeru hekdesh ad sheyikatzatzu. If you redeem them, they're still not cut. And your deal was that until they're cut, they're holy. The kevan sheniktzatzu, einon tzrichin pidyon. Once they're actually cut, they don't require redemption because they're already chulin. Elanen in bahen miyad, you right away have benefit from them. But Medvarim Amurim says that Rambam, when does this funny law apply? B'shepdan hamakdish. If the person who declared them holy, he's the one who redeemed them. Avalim pdan acher, but if somebody else would redeem them, then they go to chulin right away, even if they aren't cut, because the buyer, the redeemer, is not subject to the laws that are binding on the person who made it holy. So much so that by virtue of the fact that the other person redeemed them and for him they become permitted, they actually become permitted even for the person who made it holy originally.